Harvey, no, don't put that in your mouth. Parker Alden lunged forward, snatching the seashell from his 4-year-old son's tiny fist just before it disappeared between his lips. The boy blinked up at him, wide-eyed and innocent. But it looks like a cookie. Parker let out a breathy laugh, dropping onto the warm sand beside his son. Well, kiddo, it's not. And if you eat it, I'm not going to be able to afford the hospital bill. Harvey giggled and ran back toward the water, leaving Parker sitting alone, staring out at the calm waves of the Gulf. He adjusted the cheap camera hanging around his neck, a second-hand DSLR he used for the odd freelance gig. He'd driven down from Georgia to Florida on a whim when his buddy bailed on a photography job. A wedding had canceled last minute, but the hotel voucher was non-refundable, so here they were. A broke single dad, a beach no one had hired him to shoot, and a kid who thought every seashell was edible. "Excuse me," he turned at the sound of a woman's voice. She was standing a few feet away, tall and striking, with long dark hair and sunglasses perched on her head. She wore a simple white sundress that fluttered in the breeze, and despite the casual look, she carried herself like she belonged in a boardroom. "Yeah." Parker stood quickly, brushing sand off his shorts. She pointed at the camera around his neck. "Are you a photographer?" "Kind of," he said, glancing down. "I mean, yes, I do some freelance work." "Would you mind taking a few photos for me?" she asked, tilting her head. "I'm here alone and I'd love to have some pictures that aren't just selfies." He hesitated. "Sure, I mean, yeah." "I can do that," she smiled, and something about it knocked the breath out of him. "Thanks, I'm Presley Archer." "Parker Alden, and that's Harvey," he added, nodding toward his son now digging a hole with a plastic cup. Presley crouched down, waving at the little boy. "Hi, Harvey." Harvey looked up, then offered her a seashell. "You shouldn't eat it," Presley laughed, taking the shell and holding it to her ear. "I'll keep that in mind." Parker adjusted his camera, trying not to stare at her for too long. He took a few shots of her by the water, then some candid ones as she sat in the sand, her face lit with golden sunlight. She looked happy, relaxed, like she hadn't smiled like that in a long time. "This okay?" he asked, showing her a few of the shots. Her eyes widened. "These are beautiful." "You're really good." "Thanks, I usually do weddings, or used to." Things slowed down after. He stopped himself. No reason to dump his life story on a stranger. Presley didn't press. Instead, she glanced between him and Harvey. "You here on vacation, sort of?" "I had a job that fell through, but the hotel was already booked. Figured Harvey deserved some beach time." She nodded slowly, then looked at him again. "You seem like a good dad." "I'm trying," he said quietly, adjusting the strap on his camera. They walked back toward the boardwalk together, Harvey skipping ahead. Presley offered to buy them ice cream, and Parker hesitated until she added, "I insist, as a thank you." They sat on a wooden bench overlooking the beach, the late afternoon sun casting everything in gold. Presley licked her cone and asked, "So what do you do when you're not chasing seashells?" He chuckled. "I used to be a full-time photographer. Weddings, engagements, family shoots. Then my ex left when Harvey was 2. I picked up shifts at a garage to make ends meet. Now I do whatever pays." Presley's brows furrowed. "That's a lot to juggle." "Yeah, but worth it." She looked at him for a long second, then said, "You ever think about trying photography full-time again?" He shrugged. "If I could afford to." Presley didn't reply, but something flickered in her eyes, curiosity, maybe, or something softer. They spent the rest of the day together. Presley helped Harvey build a sandcastle, laughing when it collapsed under a rogue wave. Parker watched her, wondering who she really was. She had this calm confidence, like she belonged to a different world. By sunset, they were back by the boardwalk, barefoot and sandy. "I should get Harvey up to the room," Parker said. "But..." "This was nice." "It was," Presley agreed, her voice gentle. He hesitated, scratching the back of his neck. You want to grab dinner tomorrow night, just us. I mean, not that this wasn't great, but maybe something more." She didn't answer right away, then she smiled. "I'd love that." They exchanged room numbers, and as Parker carried a sleepy Harvey up the stairs, he couldn't stop smiling. The next night, she showed up in a sleek blue dress and heels that clicked against the boardwalk. Parker had borrowed a button-down from the hotel, lost and found, and tried to tame his hair. Presley looked like a movie star. He looked like a dad who hadn't been on a real date in years. but she smiled like she didn't care. They went to a rooftop restaurant overlooking the ocean, where string lights twinkled and jazz played in the background. Parker tried to focus on the menu, but Presley kept looking at him like she saw something no one else did. Over dinner, she asked about his dreams. He told her how he used to want his own studio, a place where people could walk in and feel like their memories mattered. She listened intently, then asked, "Why haven't you done it?" He laughed dryly. "Because I've got about $27 to my name, that's why." Presley leaned in. "What if you had more?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" She paused, then said smoothly, "What would you do with $50,000? "I'd cry," he said honestly. "Then I'd buy better equipment, get a space, market myself, give Harvey a proper home." Presley nodded, taking a slow sip of wine. "You should do it. You offering?" He joked. She smiled again but didn't answer. After dinner, they walked along the beach. Presley slipped off her shoes and Parker held them for her. The wind tugged at her hair and she looked up at the stars. "I don't usually do this," she said softly. "What? Eat with strangers or walk barefoot in the sand? Fall for someone I just met?" Parker's heart thudded. "You're falling," she looked at him. "Aren't you?" He stared at her, stunned. Then he nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." Presley stepped closer, her hand brushing his. "Good." She leaned in, and he kissed her soft and slow, like time didn't exist. And for the first time in years, Parker Alden felt like maybe everything was about to change. Parker rubbed his hands together as he stepped back from the mirror. The morning light filtered through the gauzy curtains of the beachfront motel room, casting a shimmer over the worn tile floor. Harvey was still curled under the covers, his tiny hand peeking out from beneath the blanket, clutching a stuffed dinosaur Parker had stitched back together last month. He glanced at the clock. Presley had said she'd meet them downstairs at 9. He didn't know what to expect, only that she'd sounded certain. Like she'd already decided where the day would go and had no intention of letting him talk her out of it. When he stepped into the lobby with Harvey balanced on his hip, Presley was already there. She wore a pale yellow blouse tucked into high-waisted linen pants, a pair of sunglasses perched in her hair. Her expression softened when she saw them. "Morning," she said, kneeling so she was eye level with Harvey. "Ready for an adventure?" Harvey nodded, yawning. "Does it have pancakes?" Presley laughed. "It just might." She led them to a matte black SUV parked by the curb. Parker paused. "Yours?" he asked, shifting Harvey to his other arm. She popped the back door open. "Rented. I figured you couldn't exactly ride a bike with a kid on your back." They drove 20 minutes up the coast to a quiet cafe tucked behind a grove of palms. The hostess seated them on a shaded patio overlooking the water, and Presley ordered orange juice for Harvey without asking the price. "So," she said once they were settled, stirring her coffee, "I have a question." Parker lifted his brow. "Shoot. If someone offered you a full-time gig doing what you love, no strings attached, would you take it?" He tilted his head. "Is this hypothetical?" "Not really." He leaned back in the chair. "Depends. What's the catch?" Presley didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled a crisp folder from her bag and set it on the table between them. "Parker, I want to hire you." He blinked. "For what?" "I run a company based in New York. We're launching a new wellness brand, products, lifestyle content, the works. We need someone who can capture real stories. Not a polished ad team, someone who sees people. Families, struggle, joy, life." He stared at her, caught between disbelief and confusion. "You're serious?" Presley nodded. "You said you wanted to do this full-time. I'm offering you a contract, relocation covered. Salary, benefits, everything." Harvey was too busy pouring syrup onto his pancakes to notice the way Parker had gone completely still. "You're a CEO?" he asked finally. "Technically, I'm the founder and chief creative officer," she said. "But yes." He let out a low breath, then glanced toward the ocean. "Why me?" "Because you didn't try to impress me. You didn't know who I was and you still showed up. You captured me in a way no one has in years, not just the photos." "You saw me." Parker ran a hand through his hair, trying to process it. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," she said simply. "I know you've raised a kid on your own without complaint. I know you didn't flinch when I mentioned money. And I know you love this work." He looked down at Harvey, who was now humming to himself between bites. "I can't uproot him overnight. We have routines. He's got preschool, doctor visits. I don't even own a passport." Presley's voice softened. I'd never ask you to move blindly. We'd take care of it, find a place near a good school, set you up with a pediatrician. You wouldn't be doing this alone." Parker shook his head slowly. "This is insane." "It's not," she said. "It's a chance." He didn't answer. They finished breakfast in a quiet that wasn't awkward, just heavy with thought. Later that afternoon, when Harvey was down for a nap, Parker slipped out onto the motel balcony where Presley was waiting. She was staring out at the horizon, arms folded loosely over the railing. "I haven't said yes," he said. She nodded without looking at him. "I know. I'm not used to people offering me anything without expecting something back." She turned to him. "I'm not most people." Parker leaned against the rail beside her. "What's the real reason you're here?" "Not just this trip. I mean, why the beach alone, no assistant or photographer? People like you don't just go off-grid." Presley hesitated. The wind lifted a strand of her hair and she tucked it behind her ear. "My father died 3 weeks ago," she said quietly. "We hadn't spoken in 5 years. I came here to figure out what I was still angry about." Parker's mouth parted, but he didn't speak. "I built everything to prove him wrong," she continued. "That I didn't need him, that I could turn nothing into something. And now he's gone, and it feels like I'm still looking for his approval even though he'll never give it." Parker looked at her differently now, not as the woman on the beach or the powerful executive, but someone cracked open by grief. "I'm sorry," he said. Presley gave a faint nod. "I didn't expect to meet anyone here, especially not someone who makes me want to stay longer." He swallowed. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I didn't plan for this," she said, "but I want to see where it goes, if you do." Parker's mind felt like it was racing in 20 directions. His instincts screamed to protect Harvey, not leap into something unplanned. But his heart, that was already tangled up in her. "I need time," he said. "You've got it." Before she left, she bent down and kissed his cheek. It wasn't flirtatious or dramatic, it was quiet, certain. That night, while Harvey slept wrapped in a cocoon of blankets, Parker sat at the table with the folder Presley had left him. He opened it. Inside was a typed offer letter, a breakdown of benefits, and a note written in neat script. "You gave me a piece of myself back. Let me give something to you." He closed the folder and looked across the room at the camera case sitting on the chair. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel impossible. It felt like a door had cracked open, and maybe, just maybe, he was ready to step through. The first thing Parker noticed about the New York apartment was the quiet. Not the absence of sound, there was always something humming, whether it was the elevator cables droning through the walls or the distant rhythm of city traffic, but the kind of stillness that came with security. With insulation, with comfort. He stood in the center of the living room, Harvey's small hand in his, both of them turning slowly to take it in. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the corner unit, revealing a mosaic of glittering buildings below. The furniture had already been arranged, the fridge stocked, even Harvey's room painted in soft blues and stocked with toys he hadn't even seen in catalogs. Parker set down their bags, still stunned that everything had happened so fast. Presley had sent a team to help them pack. Movers had transported what little they had. A relocation coordinator had walked him through insurance, schools, and pediatric care with the patience of someone used to guiding people through big leaps. And now, they were here, in a place that didn't smell like mildew or stale carpet. A place with a washer inside the unit and a doorman who knew their names. "Is this a hotel?" Harvey whispered. Parker smiled and knelt down beside him. "No, bud, this is home now." Harvey looked up at him wide-eyed. "For real, for real." Later that evening, Parker stood in the kitchen, running his hand over the marble countertop like it might vanish if he blinked. The oven had buttons he didn't understand. The cabinets were soft close. Even the faucet looked like it had come out of a design magazine. He was still staring at the built-in espresso machine when the doorbell rang. Presley stood on the other side, holding a brown paper bag in one hand and a bottle of wine tucked under her arm. "I figured your first night deserved something better than takeout containers and plastic forks," she said as she stepped inside. Parker took the bag from her, catching the subtle scent of something warm and buttery inside. "You cooked. Don't look so shocked," she said, slipping off her coat. "I'm not completely helpless. I wasn't sure you knew where kitchens were." "I do," she said with a grin. "I just usually delegate." They ate at the small table by the windows, Harvey already asleep in his new bed after hours of exploring every inch of his room. Presley had made lemon thyme chicken with roasted potatoes and something green Parker didn't recognize but ate anyway. "This doesn't feel real," he said halfway through the meal. Presley sipped her wine. "It is." He studied her in the low light. "You always this generous with strangers," her eyes held his. "You don't feel like a stranger." He set down his fork. "You keep doing things for me for us and I keep waiting to find out what the catch is. There isn't one." "But why me?" Presley leaned back, folding her arms. "Because I've spent years surrounded by people who want things from me. Investors, board members, even friends who expect me to be the one who always has it together. You didn't ask me for anything. You just showed up. And that means more to me than you know." Parker looked away, unsure how to hold that kind of honesty. She reached across the table, fingers brushing his. "You don't have to prove anything, not to me." His voice was quiet. "I don't know how to be part of your world. You don't need to be. I'm inviting you into mine, that's different." They cleared the table together, moving in a rhythm that felt surprisingly easy. When she reached for the sponge, their hands touched and she didn't pull away. "I've been waiting a long time to feel like this," she said. "Like I can exhale." Parker turned toward her, drying his hands on a towel. "You mean with someone?" "I mean in general." Her phone buzzed on the counter and she hesitated a moment before glancing at the screen. "Everything okay?" he asked. She nodded, then paused. "That was from my CFO. There's been pushback about bringing someone new onto the brand campaign team. They think it's too personal." Parker frowned. "Because of me. Because I didn't explain it well enough." "You don't owe me anything, Presley. If it's going to cause problems." She stepped closer. "I'm not backing out. You're the right person for this. They'll see that." He looked at her, searching. "You sure?" "I trust myself." He hesitated. "Are you worried what people will say?" "I've stopped letting other people narrate my story." She reached up, her palm against his cheek. The touch grounded him, steadied something in his chest he hadn't realized was shaking. "I don't want to mess this up," he said, his voice low. "You won't." When she kissed him, it wasn't the cautious kind of beginning. It was an answer, a closing of distance both literal and otherwise. Her hands slid into his hair, and he leaned into her like he'd been waiting for this moment since the first time she'd looked at him on the beach. They stood like that, until the city outside faded into a blur of lights and motion. Eventually, Presley pulled back, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not a project, Parker. You're a person I care about." He nodded, a little breathless. "I care about you too." She stepped back and grabbed her coat. "I should let you get some sleep." "Presley," he paused. "Thank you for all of this. I don't know how to say any of it right, but just thank you." She gave him one last look before stepping out into the hallway. "You'll show me, in your own way." The door clicked shut behind her, and Parker leaned his forehead against it for a moment, letting the silence settle. Inside, the apartment felt too big for one man and his son. But somehow, it didn't feel empty, not anymore. "Dad," Harvey whispered, tugging at Parker's sleeve, "Presley's on TV." Parker looked up from the breakfast table where he was hunched over a stack of paperwork. Harvey stood frozen in front of the television, cereal bowl in hand, pointing to the screen. Sure enough, there she was, Presley, seated on the sleek white set of a morning show, her name in bold letters beneath her image. She looked polished and poised in a navy blazer and silk blouse, answering questions with the calm authority that always made Parker feel like gravity shifted around her whenever she walked into a room. "We're launching the brand next week," she told the host, her voice crisp but warm. "It's about more than just wellness. It's about authenticity. We've brought in a new visual director to capture voices and stories that don't usually get a spotlight." "Can you reveal who that is?" the host asked. Presley smiled. "You'll meet him soon enough." Parker blinked, heart skipping. She hadn't warned him that she'd be mentioning him publicly. She hadn't needed to. She trusted him to rise to it. And that meant everything. Later that day, Parker stood in the long, sunlit studio space her team had set up for him. It still surprised him how seamlessly they'd carved out a place for him in the company's creative wing. The walls were lined with framed photographs, his photographs now each one capturing families, small business owners, and everyday moments that Presley had insisted were the real heartbeat of the brand. He adjusted the lighting on a shoot with a mother and her teenage daughter and gave gentle direction, his voice steady and clear. He no longer questioned if he belonged here. He did. When the session wrapped, Presley appeared in the doorway, her coat slung over one arm. "You're coming to the gala tonight, right?" she asked, stepping inside. "I was going to use the babysitter as an excuse to skip it," he said. "But Harvey told me I had to go because you look fancy in sparkly places." She laughed. "He's not wrong." Parker wiped his hands on a cloth and crossed the room to her. "Is this one of those events where everyone already knows each other and I stand by the shrimp cocktail pretending I'm not out of place?" "It's one of those events where I want you there," she said. "That's all that matters." That night, he stood in front of the full-length mirror in his bedroom, adjusting the collar of the tailored navy suit that had arrived in a garment bag with a handwritten note from Presley. "You're going to need this. I'll explain later." Harvey, already fast asleep with the sitter reading beside him, had given his seal of approval by declaring Parker looked like a grown-up prince. The gala was held in a glass-walled venue overlooking the East River. As Parker stepped out of the car, the buzz of conversation and click of cameras hit him all at once. Presley was waiting near the entrance in a deep red gown that shimmered beneath the lights, her dark hair swept up, her expression unreadable until she saw him. Her lips parted and her eyes softened. "You clean up well. You make it hard not to show up," he replied, offering his arm. She took it, and they stepped into a room filled with people in satin and silk, the air perfumed with money and ambition. Waiters passed trays of champagne, and somewhere a string quartet played a modern song he couldn't name. Presley introduced him to people partners, investors, journalists, and with each handshake, Parker felt the ground beneath him settle. They weren't pretending he was someone he wasn't. And no one looked surprised when she introduced him as the brand's visual director. Later, after her speech and the applause had faded, Parker found her on the balcony, overlooking the city. "I saw the segment," he said. "I figured you would. You didn't have to say anything about me." "I wanted to," she replied, her gaze steady. "I'm proud of what you've built, what we're building." He hesitated, then reached for her hand. "Do you ever think about how strange it is that I was just some guy on a beach 2 months ago?" Presley let out a quiet breath. "I think about it constantly. I think about how I almost didn't walk up to you, how I almost kept walking. But you didn't." "No," she said. "Because something about you made me stop." The moment hung there, charged and quiet, until she turned more fully toward him. "I've spent most of my life building things so I wouldn't have to need anyone, but I want you, and that's different." Parker's voice was low. "I've never had something like this. It scares me how much I want it to work." "It will," she said, "because we'll fight for it." He leaned in then, not rushed or uncertain, but sure. When he kissed her, it wasn't for show or for fairy tale effect. It was real, grounded. And when they pulled apart, her hand stayed in his. 2 weeks later, Parker stood in front of a small crowd gathered on the lower floor of a new space in Brooklyn. The sign above the entrance read Alden & Co., Photography Studio. Presley stood beside him, one arm looped through his, as Harvey ran circles with a juice box in hand. "This was your idea," he told her. "Correction," she said softly. "It was your dream. I just dared you to chase it." The studio was already booked out for family shoots and product campaigns. Parker had hired 2 assistants from the community. He'd invested in better equipment, launched a mentorship program for young photographers, and started planning a summer series featuring single parents and their stories. That night, as they returned home, Harvey asleep in the backseat, Presley reached for Parker's hand. He laced his fingers through hers without hesitation. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," he said. "You saw me," she replied. "Not the CEO, not the brand, just me, and I fell for that." "For you." When they pulled up to the apartment, Parker turned to her before getting out. "I love you, Presley." She met his gaze. "I love you too." Inside, with the city glowing behind them, they curled up together on the couch, Harvey nestled between them. And for the first time in both their lives, everything felt exactly where it was meant to be. Presley leaned her head against Parker's shoulder as the subway rumbled beneath them, the warm weight of Harvey asleep in her lap. The train car was nearly empty, the yellow glow of the overhead lights soft against the metal poles and scuffed floors. Across from them, A man in a knit cap nodded off with a guitar case balanced between his knees. Parker glanced down at her. "You're sure this wasn't too much? I wanted it," she said without lifting her head. "I wanted to see what your normal looked like. The park, the street vendors, that ridiculous puppet show," he grinned. Hey, the puppet show was Harvey's favorite part. It terrified me a little. Exactly, she laughed quietly, careful not to jostle the boy curled against her. Parker reached over and brushed a strand of hair off her cheek. Her eyes met his, tired but content. "You're good with this," he said. "The mess, the noise, all of it. I spent a long time building walls to keep things like this out. Now I want to sit in the middle of it." The train slowed, the brakes screeching as the platform came into view. Parker stood, lifting Harvey gently into his arms without waking him. Presley followed, her hand slipping into his as they stepped off the train. Outside, the wind was cooler than expected for spring. She wrapped her coat tighter, and Parker shifted Harvey higher against his shoulder, his other arm looping around her waist. They walked in silence down the block toward the apartment. The neighborhood buzzed with late-night energy music from a rooftop, someone unloading produce into a bodega, the scent of grilled meat from a food truck on the corner. Presley inhaled deeply. "I never thought I'd crave this kind of life," she said. Parker looked at her. "And now I want it every day." Inside the apartment, they settled Harvey into bed, his fingers still curled around a small plastic badge he'd gotten at the park. Presley stood in the doorway watching him sleep, Parker beside her. "He doesn't even flinch anymore when I pick him up," she whispered. "He trusts you." She turned to him. "Do you?" He didn't answer with words. He reached for her, pulled her close, and kissed her with a certainty that had taken root deep in his chest. When they parted, his voice was low. "I do." The next morning, Parker woke to the sound of Harvey giggling in the kitchen. He padded barefoot into the hallway and stopped short. Presley stood at the counter in one of his old T-shirts, flipping pancakes with a spatula in one hand while Harvey stirred fruit into a bowl with the focus of a scientist. "Careful," she said as he reached too close to the edge. "That bowl's older than you." "It's not broken yet," Harvey said cheerfully. Parker leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, watching them. Presley turned and caught his eye. "Morning," she said. "We're attempting a breakfast that doesn't involve a delivery menu. Smells like you might actually succeed." After they ate, Parker took Presley's hand and led her into the living room. He pulled a small envelope from his back pocket and handed it to her. She raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a folded piece of paper, thick, textured, with a black and white photo printed across the bottom. It was a candid shot of her and Harvey sitting on a bench in the park the day before, both mid-laugh, unaware of the camera. She looked up at him. "You took this," he nodded. "Shot it from across the playground, couldn't help myself." Her throat worked. "It's beautiful." "There's more." She unfolded the rest of the paper. It was an invitation, simple, elegant, their names printed at the top, followed by a date, 1 month from now. She looked at him, stunned. "Is this what I think it is?" He stepped closer, his voice steady. "I don't want to wait anymore, not when I already know. I want to build something with you, officially." Her eyes welled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she grinned. "You're really proposing to me with pancakes on the table and flour on my cheek. You wouldn't want it any other way." She kissed him long and slow until Harvey groaned and covered his eyes. "Are you getting married now?" he asked from the couch. Presley looked over her shoulder. "We're working on it." The ceremony was held on a rooftop in Brooklyn under a canopy of soft lights and spring blossoms. The guest list was small friends, chosen family, and co-workers who had become more than just colleagues. Presley wore a sleek, off-the-shoulder gown, her hair pinned with tiny pearls. Parker stood in a navy suit, Harvey by his side in a miniature version of the same. As she walked toward him, Parker couldn't look away. She was everything: strength, elegance, warmth, and she was walking straight into a life with him. When they said their vows, Parker's voice didn't shake. He spoke of the beach, of second chances, of finding home in the most unexpected place. Presley promised laughter, honesty, and the courage to let love in even when it scared her. Harvey stood between them as they kissed, clapping loudly and announcing, "You may now be my forever family." Afterward, they danced under the stars, the city skyline glowing around them. Presley rested her head on his shoulder as the music swelled. "This feels like the beginning," she whispered. "It is," he said. "And this time, we're not doing it alone." That night, back in their apartment, as fireworks burst in the distance and Harvey snored softly in his room, Presley and Parker curled up together on the couch. The paperwork for the studio expansion was folded neatly on the table, her tablet open beside it, showing mock-ups for the next brand campaign, one that featured real families, real stories, and the power of second chances. Presley traced lazy circles on Parker's chest. "You know the best part of all this. What? I never saw you coming, but now I can't imagine my life without you." He kissed the top of her head. "Good. Because you're stuck with me." And with the city glittering around them, the boy they loved sleeping just a room away, and everything they'd fought for finally in place, they closed their eyes and let the world settle, together. Always.